What's up, music lovers? Thanks for clicking on my channel. First of all, sorry about that thumbnail. It's purposely obnoxious. I mean, it seems like the majority of thumbnails on YouTube are purposely obnoxious. Okay, and the reason for this video is that quite a while ago I was at an Animals as Leaders concert, and as I'm waiting in line to get let into the venue, waiting for my friends to show up, I strike up a conversation with a guy there. He and I are talking about music. Both of us love progressive rock and progressive metal. We're talking about Opeth because he had an Opeth shirt on. I had a Haken t-shirt, so we're just having a good time. We're talking, but I'm sort of getting the feeling that this guy's a bit of a progressive rock snob. He asks me, oh, well, what got you into music? And I said, oh, well, hearing AC/DC for the first time made me want to play guitar. And before I could even finish my sentence, his response was a little bit something like this. Oh my god, AC/DC, they're so talentless. I bet you're also one of these idiots who just thinks the Beatles are the greatest thing ever and you're just like this constantly to them. I'm not joking. That was pretty much his reaction. I think I'm downplaying it a little bit, and it kind of left me sitting there at a loss being all like, what the hell was that? Not as if I was mad or anything. I was just like, dude, that was weird as hell. But that interaction made me want to make this video because it got me thinking about the differences in styles between a band like AC/DC and what they do so well, and then bands like Haken, Dream Theater, Opeth, and these more technical progressive rock and metal bands. And AC/DC is the biggest rock band in existence, probably. They have the highest selling rock album of all time, so it's not like I feel as though I have to defend their honor. But I do think that if you aren't appreciating certain aspects of their music, you're kind of missing out. And this video will also kind of mention my own growth as a musician, from being a kid who just thought AC/DC was the best to growing out of that phase, focusing way more on technical musicians, and then coming back around to the point where I can appreciate what AC/DC does so well. So being that AC/DC is such a successful group, they are also a group that gets a lot of criticisms. Pretty much any successful artist or musician is gonna have that. And some of the criticisms that get thrown at them are they're the ultimate boomer band, same album 11 times, basic songs, just 3 chords, really simplistic drumming. These aren't necessarily criticisms that your typical music fan would have, but they are certainly criticisms I've heard in the progressive rock and progressive metal community. Even for this video, I had to make sure I was wearing a Haken shirt to be like, no, I'm one of you. I'm one of you. I'm not just a boomer. I'm one of you. I suppose these posters aren't helping. Maybe Mastodon and System of a Down, but it's funny because on this side of my room, I have all my more modern posters. On this side, I just have all the classics. And thinking about these criticisms that I feel like a lot of more kind of snobby musicians might throw at AC/DC is really missing the point of what makes their music so good. And I think missing the point and the appreciation of a lot of kind of core aspects that go into making music that are often overlooked. A lot of times people get into this mindset of music being a sport, and hey, if Tosin Abasi or John Petrucci can play guitar parts that Angus Young could never even dream of, that must mean they are the superior musicians. But I feel that's a really boring, basic, and kind of harmful way to think about music. And I would never say that AC/DC is underrated because they're one of the biggest bands in existence, but I do think that they are underappreciated sometimes because their music sounds easy, but it isn't really easy to play if you're actually playing it right. AC/DC is a really good litmus test for me as a musician because you can ask someone, hey, play an AC/DC song, and depending on how they play it will tell you a lot about how long they've been playing music, because their songs are simple to learn but very difficult to master. And there's a really big difference in playing something like this or playing it like this. And that ability to play something really simple but also give it the emotion that it deserves is not really something you can learn in theory. It's just something you kind of have to live and experience. It's kind of intangible. And sure, AC/DC isn't going to be playing in 13/8, going through the circle of fifths, trading off solos between the guitar and the keyboardist while at 190 BPM and borrowing notes from the Hungarian minor scale. But that doesn't mean that AC/DC hasn't absolutely mastered these more abstract elements of making music, playing in the pocket, playing with feel, getting your guitar tone just right, and just grooving so hard. These are not the most flashy aspects of performing music or writing it, but that doesn't make them any less important. And it's not just with the guitars. Like I said before, one of the criticisms thrown at AC/DC I've heard over the years is that the drumming is just really simple, it's basic, it's boring. But Phil Rudd is an absolute beast of a drummer. And if you don't believe me, listen to the isolated drum tracks for songs like Let There Be Rock, Hell's Bells, and For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. This guy is like a human metronome, and he's able to hold down a rock steady tempo from the beginning to the end of a 5-minute long song. And he also still has feel and nuance and some dynamics in there, so you still feel like it's an actual human playing. And with Hell's Bells, and For Those About to Rock in particular, those are songs that are really difficult to just kind of lock in. The tempo is not very fast, it's not very slow, it's just kind of right in the middle. And someone might say, well, what's the big deal about that? It's the drummer's purpose to keep the time and to lock down the tempo. What's the big deal? It's super easy, right? And I'm willing to bet that someone who would say something like that has never actually sat down alone in a room with just a drum set or a guitar and a metronome and try to keep the same tempo for 5, 10, 15 minutes. But it is another fundamental aspect of making music sound musical that Phil Rudd has definitely mastered. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but then again, this whole video is kind of a tangent. It's really funny that the people who criticize the most, in my experience, are usually the people who are the worst at doing these things and the worst people to play music with. For example, I remember I was in a cover band with a drummer who just thought he was the greatest drummer to ever exist, and he just thought he was so fantastic, and he could not hold down a tempo to save his life. We would be there rehearsing, and I would just be thinking to myself, geez, I didn't know Learn to Fly had 9 tempo changes over the course of its 4-minute runtime. Apparently the Foo Fighters are progressive rock geniuses, and yet this was also a drummer who had a massive ego and was very quick to diminish the accomplishments of other bands while never actually focusing on just those core aspects of making music that aren't glamorous, but they are important. I remember one time he was talking about the drum solo he was going to do for this gig, and his exact words were, yeah, you know, I could do something like Neil Peart style, but that's kind of overplayed and oversimplistic. I like to be a bit more reserved because that's where the real musicality is. Some people, dude. I was standing over in the corner, and I usually try not to have my emotions show, but for that I couldn't help but snicker. It's really funny. AC/DC songwriting is kind of like a Jackson Pollock painting. You might look at it and be like, yeah, that's just simple and boring and anyone can do it, what's the big deal? But when you actually take the time to break it down or to try to do it yourself, you realize how much thought goes into it. And if you are a fan of modern progressive metal bands like Haken, Protest the Hero, Dream Theater, Periphery, and you've just sort of written off AC/DC as this old, outdated boomer band that you can't really learn much from, I would say that the bands I just listed also are really good at doing these fundamental things that AC/DC does, and there's certain modern progressive metal bands that don't do those certain things nearly as well. And I definitely want to reiterate that music is not a sport, it's not a competition, so I'm not trying to say, hey, these bands suck, this band's better. It's just appreciating the different things that go into making music. And just like with my video on the Beatles, I'm not out to try to convince people that AC/DC should be your favorite band of all time. They're not my favorite band anymore. But it's really just a video to get people to go, hey, even if I don't like this musician, I can still respect and appreciate what they're doing. So yeah, those are my random thoughts on AC/DC and venting a little bit of frustration I've had with an obnoxious concert goer and a really obnoxious drummer I've had to play with. So hopefully you got something out of this video. Please drop a comment letting me know your thoughts. I always love to talk to people about music and these weird little abstract ideas that go into making it. So let's have a little conversation down below. I also have an instrumental song out called Waking Giant. There's a link down below if you want to check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, there's probably another one popping up like right here you might also like. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you at the next video.